New York City Mayor Eric Adams has downplayed rumors that former Governor Andrew Cuomo is plotting to launch a bid to take over Adams' seat. The current mayor said on Monday, "I don't see him running. I think he is looking at his next political move, and there is a lot of things he can look at, but I have to be ready to run New York, and that is what I'm focused on doing right now." Politico reported last week that Cuomo is weighing a run for New York mayor amidst Adams' legal woes. In case you forgot, Andrew Cuomo resigned as governor over 2 years ago amid allegations of sexual harassment and claims that his administration covered up COVID-19 nursing home deaths.
Mayor Adams, on the other hand, was accused of sexually assaulting a woman in 1993 in a legal filing made last week. Filing names Adams, the Transit Bureau of the New York Police Department, and the New York Police Department Guardians Association as defendants. Per the filing, the plaintiff was sexually assaulted by Eric Adams in the early 90s while they both worked for the city of New York, allegedly. Adams told reporters on Thursday this, quote, absolutely did not happen, and that he does not recall ever meeting this person. Here he is on MSNBC.
I have no idea, why this was brought forth. I don't recall ever meeting this person. Over 30 years ago, this was stated, took place. And, people like you who know me, I have always fought on behalf of not only women specifically, but in general, uplifting people and protecting people. I protected people for 22 years as a police officer, and I know what it is to make sure that people should always receive the protection that they deserve.
Joining us now to discuss is movement lawyer and host of the Olurinatti Show, Olayemi Olurin. Welcome.
Morning, everybody. Hi.
It's good to see you again. Now, help us understand the context of this, because Eric Adams is not the only one. He's one of a handful of people who have recently, in the last week or so, been charged or accused of sexual assault allegations, kind of from the past, and it seems to be the result of this New York Adult Survivors Act expiring last Friday. Can you set up for us why it is that we're seeing so many of these new claims right now?
Because the Adult Survivors Act actually allowed, I think, one more year, tacked on one more year onto the statute of limitations. And so now people are basically in the last year in which they can file these suits. And so that's why it's happening. But I think it's important to remember that this is not the only problem on Eric Adams' desk right now. Before this sexual assault allegations actually came into the picture, he's already being investigated by the FBI for issues related to his campaign and financing and funding. And the FBI raided his funds manager, raided there and took his phone. So Eric Adams has big problems all around beyond just these sexual assault allegations.
Yes, we talked about the FBI issue on the show earlier, or last week, something like that. So definitely there are other issues at play. Yeah, look, I mean, I don't know. While everyone has the right, to make accusations, even if they were from a long time ago, I think, frankly, it's hard to adjudicate issues from more than 30 years ago. We're talking in this case, even if they have a right to do it. I don't know, how much. If I was a voter or a supporter of Eric Adams, I'm not sure I would necessarily judge him differently for something this long ago. Without trying to, weigh into the truth of the matter or trying to decide. That seems tricky.
I think even if you felt that way, which I think is, I'm sure, reasonable for some people, I think it's important to remember that Eric Adams' approval rating that just dropped last week is 36% across the board. So even if it weren't for the sexual assault allegations, New Yorkers are dissatisfied with his administration in terms of the massive budget cuts that we just saw to libraries, to school, to education, and then yet budget raises for the NYPD and new robots going around in the subway stations, despite the fact that the libraries are now closed on the weekend. So Eric Adams, people are dissatisfied with his administration for a series of things: that stop and frisk is back up, that they're getting ready to do a federal receivership, that he has been caught lying about several things, right? There have been a number of different incidents that have been in the news. So New Yorkers are dissatisfied with Eric Adams, even if they didn't buy into the sexual assault allegations. They already want him out, it seems. And I think that has a lot to do with what you're seeing go on with him and Cuomo, because I think regardless of whether or not Andrew Cuomo intends to run, which I think is foolhardy because he is literally our disgraced ex-governor, and regardless of what is happening with Eric Adams' popularity, he is still somebody who had to resign after 11 sexual assault allegations. The New York State, the Attorney General found that there was credibility in 11 different allegations. So we still don't want him, but I think it's important to think about the context as to why he's saying this now, because I think this is a recognition that the tides are turning on Eric Adams, that Andrew Cuomo even feels willing to say this loudly, that he'd run for mayor. And I think Eric Adams need to downplay whether or not he's running is basically trying to hold off and thwart people from coming out and speaking against him now, or people being willing to run against him, or people being willing to take him on. So I think that's what we're seeing, is that the tides are shifting on Eric Adams.
Yeah, I was going to say, you want to talk about sexual misconduct allegations. What Cuomo faced was a lot more recent, was adjudicated much more substantially, and frankly, those allegations were just the tip of the iceberg. A lot of people, including a state senator, made, frankly, even more serious accusations of COVID, the nursing home deaths being attributed to his policies. Also very well demonstrated his efforts to cover that up in order to have his book sell more. So this is, not, I think, a figure that people are necessarily clamoring for, but I'm not in New York. I'm not, talking to the people on the ground. Is there some fondness for Cuomo that, wouldn't be obvious to national reporters in another city?
No, I don't think there's any fondness for Cuomo, but I do think that what happened to Cuomo is mirroring a lot of what's happening to Eric Adams, right? Before the sexual assault allegations were what ultimately put the nail in Cuomo's coffin. What happened first was the scandal with the nursing homes, public outcry about how he was handling Rikers, and then the sexual assault allegations happened. In Eric Adams' case, it has been the news. This is well substantiated all over the news, in the federal receivership and the federal monitor that's in charge of looking over Rikers has already spoken to this, but multiple things. Eric Adams reestablished stop and frisk. Eric Adams got rid of the policy in which the New York's Department of Corrections would inform the public when in-custody deaths happen. Eric Adams decided he'd had enough of public outcry about the fact that there have been more deaths in Rikers than ever before now that he's been mayor. So he stopped. He completely got rid of the policy, and they stopped announcing in-custody deaths altogether. Then there were repeated scandals of multiple death cover-ups at Rikers. And then now you have the FBI looking into his campaign, and then now you have these sexual assault allegations. So I think Eric Adams is actually getting ready to go the way of Cuomo.
Yeah, I mean, the polls, we're not New Yorkers, but there was polling of New Yorkers that echoes what you're saying here, Ole. 33% of city respondents think that with respect to the Turkish debacle, the FBI investigation, that he did something illegal. That's 33%. 39% think that he did something unethical but not illegal, meaning the overwhelming majority think that he did something seriously wrong. You alluded to some of these budget issues. I've seen a lot of people complaining that while you have these robots that are going through the subway station that are being escorted by police officers, unclear what their purposes, there's no funding to keep the libraries open on the weekends when people need libraries. Your points being made about Rikers and some of the ongoing criminal justice issues in New York City really ring true. If not Cuomo, then who? Because we know we got into this Eric Adams situation in part because there was a failure to consolidate around a liberal or a left-leaning candidate once Stringer dropped out suddenly in response to a different set of sexual allegations, misconduct allegations, that were considered to be, in retrospect, I think, much less serious than some of the allegations that we're talking about with respect to Cuomo and others.
I think we have the opposite problem now. I fully agree. I discussed that in my basically documentary on Eric Adams that I have on my show about the mayoral election and the ranked choice and how we got into that issue of people not consolidating. Now I think we have the opposite problem. We haven't had really anybody willing to become a contender, not any serious ones that I've heard of, against Eric Adams. And I think because when I was last having these kind of conversations with people on the ground and organizers, it seemed like the consensus was that it was too late, that someone would have had to start earlier, that no one was really willing to challenge him. But I think that the tides are going to turn on that, because I think that was when it seemed established, or it seemed assumed, that he would get another term because it wasn't a contender. Now that there are all these allegations and it seemed like he might end up losing, he might end up having to resign in disgrace altogether, let alone be able to run for a second term. So I think maybe now I'm going to look and see if other people emerge as willing to run against him. Right now, all I've heard from is Andrew Cuomo, and we don't want him. No one's taking Andrew Cuomo. So as of now, there are no serious contenders for Eric Adams. But I think we might see, now that the tides are turning against him, and I think the Democratic establishment is starting to turn on him, probably with all of his noise about the migrant crisis and complaining about Joe Biden, I think that we'll see probably someone willing to challenge him.
Olayemi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, y'all.